Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, evening, for our special board meeting. We're going to get started with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Tammy, you'll see that we have a quorum tonight. Thank you so much. Ms. Anna. I'm turning this over.
So I actually get to
Perfect.
start us off. So we welcome. We are gathered here today to talk about potential November 2024 bond discussion. So the outcome we're looking for today this evening is for the board to hear options and discuss the potentials of potentially placing a school bond on the upcoming November ballot. And we've been here for a while, seen the previous two bonds failed. We've kind of got together, looked at the work that's previously been done and tried to put together some options for the board to review and discuss that we believe would be very impactful to both our students and our communities. So
Who did you get together with?
Yep, so we reviewed all the previous long-range facilities, notes, minutes, plans. It's like a 75-page document. And then district office people talk with some principals to say, here's what we've done. How would we look at this maybe differently? So that's where we're at. Now it's kind of gathering the input from the board on what you guys would want to see. So we put this really around two primary goals. Those goals, we're also calling them kind of two big buckets. That would be safe and healthy schools, and then creating a stronger community. And within those, how we're kind of defining that and how you'll see these is when we talk about our safe and healthy schools, those are urgent security and repair projects that are necessary to keep students safe and healthy. And then on the stronger communities, this would be projects designed to create excitement and opportunities for Kirk County students, as well as our residents. These are our community school, these are our taxpayer schools. So making sure that they see the excitement and the opportunity of what we're doing for students as well. With that, to dig in a little bit deeper, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Skinner.
All right. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. So we are going to look at those two big buckets, safe and healthy schools and stronger community, along with a couple of more areas. So ongoing monitoring and transparency. It's very important for me as the superintendent and for my team to make sure that we earn the trust of the community by really monitoring and being very transparent. So anytime there's money going out, anytime that we are asking for anything or giving updates, we want to make sure that we are very clear and we communicate all of those projects effectively. And then really, this is very, very important as well. Maintaining the lowest school bond rate in Central Oregon. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. And then just public involvement. We want to pull in experts. So you'll see in a minute, we have some great sparking ideas, and we want to make sure that we pull in the community to get their involvement going and their expertise. So when we think about stronger community, we think about what is it that we can partner with the community to do? So we want to spark interest. We want some excitement. We want some really fun ideas that we can bring in that possibly the community can also utilize these buildings for. And we really produce college and career ready students in the workforce. So one of the menu items, so these are all some options that the board can discuss that we feel like will really gather around and have that exciting moment and spark interest to build our communities even stronger. One of the options would be for Grizzly Mountain HomeLink. So a building that maybe would be already existing in the community and potentially moving district office with them. So looking at an existing building that's for sale, and then the renovations along with that. So that's one option that really gives Grizzly Mountain the opportunity to spread with their enrollment, giving them that space. Another option, so one or two, another option with Grizzly Mountain HomeLink could be something very similar to Pioneer, so a modular idea. Another idea that we really felt like could be a potential idea for the board to discuss tonight is CTE trade programs, our career and technical education expansion. something like a really cool auto tech and or cosmetology. This is gonna really produce those students to be able to go out and be able to work automatically. When you get your oil changed and your tires rotated, it's not cheap, right? So we're giving these kids an opportunity to have a certification to really be able to go out into the community and be able to do some good work. You know, and really bringing in the community for those oil changes themselves. So if you get an oil change, you get your tires rotated, and our kids get some work and learning and a certification along the way. So indoor athletic space at the high school, these next areas are really about athletics, some field lighting, some turf field opportunities. So kind of 4, 5, and 6, we can have some discussions around athletic spaces and use. The next one is Powell Butte Classroom Modular Replacement. There's some existing modulars there that really need to be replaced. So this would give our Powell Butte community a nice replacement and nice area to work. 8, Performing Arts Building. It's very important again to bring in the community. This building could be also used for our scholars as well as dance recitals, bringing in the community, maybe some outdoor, some additional people coming in, music venues, those types of things. So allowing the community and the school again to partner together. Everyone probably knows by now my passion for early childhood. We have a need, you know, in the community. We keep hearing about childcare. We keep hearing about, you know, those opportunities. This is not childcare. This is an opportunity for students, our scholars, our 3- and 4-year-olds to actually get a teacher, a certified teacher, and be able to really be kindergarten ready. Research shows that when we get our school kids started even earlier, they are reading by the end of 1st grade, and that's a goal that I have for our community. 10, so it could be 9 or 10. So helping with some of the overflow at the middle school, we could also do a pre-K through 8, housing about 200, 250 kids to be able to kind of help with some of the enrollment. This could maybe be a choice option, something like Montessori or a language or a STEM or something like that to give another choice for our parents in the community. So 10 and 11 could be somewhat, you know, discussed and interchangeable. Again, looking at some support for the middle school in an expansion area off of the middle school for that overflow. And then number 12 is another menu item that we can discuss, central service buildings. So we might talk about it being auxiliary, operations, but basically it's a place for our maintenance, technology, our print shop, and then our nutrition administration over in a separate building. So again, building stronger communities, creating those partnerships with our community. So as the superintendent, one of my big jobs here, all of those projects are fun and exciting. We want to build a stronger community. We want to have more options. We want to be a destination district for our kids. But a big one is safe environments and healthy learning environments. So when we know our buildings need repairs, we want to make sure that we are offering state of the art. And we want to make sure that our kids are safe and healthy at all times. So with that being said, I want to pass it over to Leland for the next few minutes so that he can talk about some of the maintenance that we need to look at to be able to have this bucket completed. Do you want this or?
Yeah, I'll take the clicker. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of go, that's low. Go building by building and talk about the healthy and safety items that we need at all these buildings. So starting with Barnes Butte. Well, the Barnes Butte does have some cameras, but it doesn't have enough. So we want to add additional cameras to that system and improve that system, change it over to what we're using with the rest of the district. And then we need to make some more safety upgrades to all of our vestibules in the schools. Okay, so Crooked River, you guys have heard me, I know you guys hear me say this all the time, but one of the biggest things to provide a healthy school is make sure that you have a good exterior shell. So that means exterior walls and roofs. So Crooked River needs a new roof. It also it has 2 boilers that are old boilers. Those boilers need to be upgraded, and we need to add air conditioning to that building. And then that building needs some safety upgrades to the vestibules as well. The middle school, we all know that it needs a roof and it needs boiler upgrades as well. And there's also air conditioning in this. Needs camera. We switched it over and we added some cameras, but we need to add some more cameras to the middle school. And then actually more safety upgrades to the vestibules. The high school, we just need to make some upgrades to the vestibules and the entryways and work on some of the entries. Steen's Pillar. We'll do all of these together. So altogether, every one of those buildings needs a new roof on it. The north and south building do not have like modern type construction in the framing of those roofs. So those roofs need to be completely stripped off and the framing needs to be built up and then new roofing needs to be added to it. There's so many layers of roofing on those two buildings that we can't go over the top of the roofing anymore.
Dylan, how many layers are there?
I think there's seven layers of roofing on there. And then the top membrane layer two, if you didn't know that, they're flat top on the very top of those. So those need to be replaced as well. Steensville, we added some HVAC units to that and made it some improvements there. So they're a heat pump type system, but we still have the boiler. And the boiler runs the heat that goes along the windows and the hallways. So we need to replace those two boilers with something probably a lot smaller and something that will heat those areas adequately. And then there's more safety upgrades we could do at Steens Pillar too. Out at Paulina has some roof work that needs to be done and it needs some cameras added. Brothers, we need to replace that HVAC system. It's a heat pump system and it's nearing the end of its life and it needs to just be completely replaced. And then some security cameras there. You don't really need them inside the classroom, but it'd be good to have them around the perimeter of the building so we can see what's going on around the edge of the building. Pal Butte has a very similar, almost identical system to what Steens Pillar has, but it still has its old boiler and it only has one. It doesn't even have two. So that building is, I think that boiler is 1919, still running. But we do need to replace it and put something in there so we have some redundant heat. If the entire, those systems that have the heat pumps in them, if those entire systems go down, those boiler systems are still redundant for the rest of the building. So those boilers will still heat the entire building. So that's our redundant heat source. So we want to make sure that we have that in place. Pal Butte does need some cameras. It needs some fencing upgrades. And then the entrance up there could use an upgrade to the vestibule there. So for some safety stuff. Transportation, that roof on that building is pretty old and it's at the end of its life. And it has rooftop heating units on it and those need to be replaced. The nutrition warehouse, it just has some access improvements that need to be done. It's not much there. And then the stadium, the exterior shell of that building needs to be taken care of. The siding on the back of it needs to be replaced. And there is a roof underneath the bleachers that's old and we know that it needs to be replaced. It's approaching the end of its life. That was all of those that I had. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Anna. She's gonna talk about the proposed timeline of all this stuff. Clicker.
Yes.
Okay. Oops, I clicked too far, sorry.
Oh, perfect. No. I'm getting ready to for my next. So I put together a visual of what we need to do in order to make the deadlines for the November ballot. So you can see today is the yellow star, and then based on the input from the board tonight, we would take that information to bond council. We would then prepare a resolution for the Monday, August 12th board meeting.
Who's on the bond council?
Bond council is attorneys. It's Oric. Oric is the name of the attorneys.
Okay.
Good answer. Okay. So Oric would create the resolution for the board. I would review it, Tammy would review it, we'd make sure that it's good. We've been put it in front of the board on Monday night. And then the board would approve, if the board so chooses, to that resolution, and then that would give us time to actually prepare the form that needs to go to the county, and that deadline is August 16th.
So that's where we're at with this. So if we don't come to any agreement or we don't pass a resolution on Monday, it's very unlikely we will make the November ballot.
And bond council's ready to write a resolution in 48 hours notice?
They are ready. I checked with them before we even scheduled this meeting, and yeah, they're very ready, and they're great to work with, so. Okay. So. The next section of the evening is for us to actually talk about what would be in the bond. So we've started with, just have to switch over here. Oh, that as well. I'm gonna open up a spreadsheet. So in your packet, there's section, a page with a blue section and a yellow section. And I'm just gonna open that up in spreadsheet form and go over that with you. Here it is on screen. So you can see the top section corresponds with what Joel was explaining in his presentation, the safe and healthy schools piece. The second section has to do with the stronger community. So what we've done is put an estimated cost in this column here. And what we're saying here is that that amount is, that's just the necessary facilities upkeep that we would need. The bottom section has, it is the more, where the board would need to decide which of these projects would you choose to put into the bond, and that's where most of the discussion, I think, will happen. If you look at all of the necessary facilities upkeep of 43.6 million, plus the additional potential projects of 73.9 million, that's 117.5 million. We don't know what the board will want to do for as far as the maximum bond levy. We've talked about proposing to 80 million. And then we were approved for another $6 million awesome grant, which was very surprising. And then we have to subtract out, anytime you issue bonds, there's what's called cost of issuance. You have to pay an underwriter, bond counsel, you have to have, you have to pay the state, kind of a fee, an extra fee, and then you have to pay Moody's or some similar organization. There's a lot of costs that go into that. So that would give us about $85.4 million. We would be over. This 117 million is $32 million over. So we can't do all of these things. So what I've done is I've created another column, which I'm going to unhide here, if you can see. And in this column, I've added all of the same amounts from the blue. So those are all the same. But then over here, if the board members want to say, we need to look at, what if we did this, 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 and this, we can add those up quickly. And then as we add things in this column, this number down here should equal 0, would be the idea. So if you were to say, for example, we really think this $11 million item needs to be in there, then what I would do is just make that $11 million. And then you could go down here and see that this has reduced. Does that make sense? So it's a working discussion where you can tell us what you think. We work together to come up with an amount. If there's something that you feel that it should be on the list that isn't on the list, all I have to do is click and add a row. So.
And have we had any public input to what the public wants on the list?
The only opportunity, just because of the short timeline, the only opportunity that we've had is just from the past bonds. All of the public input that we had from that, and then anything that we've heard from the board so far.
Are you gonna have time to hear from the community before we write this bond or bring it to a vote? Because the community ultimately has to, vote to up their tax rate in the end, and we're once again not involving them before we put it on a ballot.
So,
So looking at that time frame, we would have to,
right,
in the next 48 hours, get together with.
So the community could have input if there's, so it's difficult now to have time for the community to give input on additional items that would need to be on here. And we have assumed that the board has been talking to the community and have, the things that you've brought forward to us came from them. But then if there are things on here that are chosen, the community can have input on, what does that look like? How does it work? How much, you know, for each thing that's on here, there will be components of it, and there'll need to be decisions made about how much is spent on each component, or maybe even locations and things like that. So if you're uncomfortable with that timeline, then, like I said, we won't be able to make this November bond. And that is totally your decision. We just wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to make that decision, not just staff assuming.
So if we said no to this and we wanted to target the next election, we'd be looking at the primary in 2025.
There is a May election in 2024. Sorry,
No,
yes,
25.
I'm sorry, 2025. Yes,
Was
we would be,
election in 2024.
you're right. Sorry. 2025, yes, May of 2025.
But we'd lose the benefit of the awesome grant, or
No.
is there any downside to waiting till May?
We would be able to apply again for the awesome grant. We
Do
don't
we
have
have to have an updated study?
May of 2025 is the last time that we can use that same study. So we have one more opportunity. So if we decide not to do the November election, we can do some things behind the scenes to make sure that we're still eligible for the May awesome grant. We can do that. The November election is ideal just because of the number of voters that are anticipated, because of the type of election that it is. Better turnout. So,
In putting forth the bonds and stuff, have you involved anybody from the budget committee, like Wade Flagel or chair? I don't want to target.
Susan sitting there.
So I think I am very supportive of like a trade bond. I really would like to see that we are representing our community. I think that's a big community want. I know Dr. Skinner I'm very impressed with some of the stuff that she has brought over from Texas, like graduating these kids with an associate's degree or a trade. And we heard at the last meeting that we have all this money and all this hoopla around the trades, only had 4 certificates. And that's very disappointing. So I'm very, very supportive of running a trade box. I think that's something for the community, but I also think there's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we're doing correctly, like involving the budget committee, involving the public, making sure that, you know, it's not, one of the things that I've heard a lot from is like the $10 million in the ESSER funds. And, you know, the school district didn't get a lot of community involvement, and I wasn't paying that much attention, but we built a Grizzly or a Pioneer building for $4 million. And we didn't do some of these upgrades that were needed. And as of right now, I think there's 60 kids enrolled in Pioneer. And so I want to make sure that there's a lot of transparency going forward with the community of exactly how their tax dollars are being spent. And the thing with the awesome grant, like, I think that's great. We want to find that match, but it's still essentially the taxpayer money, because it's all state money that's coming through from the taxpayer. So I am for a trade bond. I would like some, I am very interested in finding a potential building to house like Grizzly Mountain in the district office. Because right now we pay and rent $113,000 a year to rent this building to High Desert ESD. So it'd be nice to own our own building for taxpayer money to stay. You know, like in something that we own, we're invested in, instead of throwing that money away.
So if you're asking me if we have had community involvement, we have not had as much community involvement as we, as leadership, would like. If we would have done this the way we normally would have, it would have been maybe a 12 to 18 month process. Where we would have had the Long Range Facilities Committee involved and a lot of community members invited to be on that committee. It's just that we have not been able to get that going. And so we're now, and then we were to a point where, we tried for a May bond, it didn't happen. And then we started talking to the board about, should we try for a November bond? And then we were kind of waiting for the superintendent to get on board so we could make sure. This is a big undertaking for superintendent. Is the new superintendent ready for this? And so now we're to the point where, yes, we think we're all ready. We've got all of the things aligned. And it all just kind of came together really, really fast. So that's what we're up against. It's not perfect.
I mean, thought of, we ran a bond in November. Do you have any numbers together for like the Facebook and Apple roll off, the tax roll off, of how that would affect this bond for the taxpayers?
Yeah.
Do we have those numbers?
Yeah, it's on the back. It's not in great detail, but we did assume a certain percentage of the Facebook and Apple. The data centers value would come onto the tax rolls. And we know which years certain values should be, at least when those exemptions will be expiring. We have today's values and we've assumed about 55% will be the value at that time in the future when they come onto the tax rolls, which is pretty conservative. And so, based on that information with an $80 million levy, which is the orange column that you see there, the tax rate would be $1.23, which would be the lowest in Central Oregon. We're already the lowest in Central Oregon because we're 62 cents per thousand.
Did you say by 62 cents per thousand, or we're at 60?
We're at 62 currently, and we're the lowest by a large margin. And even if we went to $1.23, we'd still be the lowest in Central Oregon for what's issued at this point.
So in 2022, when we ran a $66 million bond, we estimated that would be a dime. But of course, interest rates have gone up substantially. Is that the difference between the dime and the 29
There's
cents?
more to it than that. That's a great question. At that time, the tax rate was 95 cents or something like that. And so what we were saying is, if you just increase the tax rate by 10 cents, you could get $66 million. It was an increase based on what the tax rate was at that year. Because that bond didn't pass, the tax rate, well,
Spread down.
because the bond was structured, the existing bonds were structured to continually step down. With the hope that someday we would be able to fill in additional bonds. Now, if you were to say it's an increase, it's a much larger increase because the tax rate has decreased so much. But it's still, if you look at this, the blue column where it says it's a $60 million, about a $60 million bond. It says the tax rate would be $1.03. That's basically, I mean, that's exactly, actually, I think that's just slightly above what we were talking about when we ran the $66 million bond before. I think it was gonna be 90, what did we say? It was gonna be 95, something like that. Yeah. So it's really
$80 for
close.
$1.03 total.
Mhm. And the $1.03 is just it's a magic number
That
that,
was the number we got to in 2013.
yeah,
So we were just replicating.
Yep.
So how, I'm sorry, twos, but if the tax base expands by 25% in 2028, when the data centers roll on, how does the tax rate then jump to 72 cents in that year? As opposed to contracting, or would it have contracted more?
another great question. It's because you would structure the debt so that more would be due during the time when it jumps up. So you can issue the bond, each bond. So bonds are not like a mortgage where it's not like you owe $80 million to all one person. You're selling $5,000 increments to individuals. And so what we would do is issue bonds so that in those years when the tax base goes up, you have more bonds that come due that year. So you can structure it that way and you just sell more bonds on those years. But you get the $80 million or the $60 million all at once. Up front.
When did they prepare these estimates?
Yesterday,
Because yesterday, the yield curve was inverted and short-term bonds were costing more than long-term bonds. I'm sorry, long-term bonds were costing more than short-term bonds.
We
So
would sell in January. So
are they, and just ignoring that?
I'm not sure. It was yesterday morning. We would do more of these analyses as we go along. So that we would have better information as we go, but generally, what you see today is what it will be in January.
Hannah or Joel, when you guys gathered all the information from past bonds and past long range facilities and all the things from the community, was the general consensus of what the community was talking about? Is it presented in here as well?
Yeah, all the major themes that we've heard over the last two bonds are represented in that list.
So if there was something that was included previously that was criticized and wasn't something that sounded like the community was interested in, that's not shown here.
Okay,
Did you reach out to other forms of the community besides the long range facility? Or is all this data just from the committee that was?
Typically, that long range facility does represent. When we form those, it tries to represent the different sections of the community, so, it was based on what they said, which is a broad representation, nothing in addition to that for this round.
So if we put a bond on in November, then do we have time to discuss with the community or do that after to look at this as a whole, to get their input on that?
Well, there's a way that it's, usually done. We don't always have to do it exactly that way. The resolution would state basically what would happen with the bond money. And so you couldn't, once you pass that resolution, even if you have community input, you can't stray too far. I mean, you can't stray away from what the resolution says. There's a little bit of flexibility in it because they try to make it broad, but if it says, if it doesn't say in there, build a new building, you can't build a new building. So you have to be careful about, like if you say, all right, we're gonna pick these things and then we're gonna do the resolution, have that pass. We're filing with the county on the 16th, what we're planning to do with the bond money. So there's not a lot of room there to do some changes. That you can do some changes. You just have to be really careful. You have to make sure that. That's why we usually put a lot more time into this ahead of time, because you bring in every single additional person that you bring in, whether it's a staff member, a student, a business owner, whatever, every single additional person that you bring in has a new idea. And so you can't be introducing new ideas if you've kind of already created the list of the basics of what you're gonna do. But you definitely can get input about, like I said, how do we make these things happen? Where do they go? What do they look like? If, for example, when we passed the bond to build Barnes Butte, after that bond passed, we continued to get community input. We actually had a design committee with people from the community that sat in this room and designed that school. So we would continue to get community input even after the bond passes. It's not like you just never do that.
So between like now and Monday, the community has the opportunity, which they're probably not, but.
we're on the 7th.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you can, and then what would happen is if you wanted to revise the resolution before you passed it, you could do that.
how does the par value in the back relate to all the numbers in the front? Where are you getting this? So your 60 million in construction costs is related to this, how?
It doesn't relate to that, and that's why I have this up on the screen. What you have in front of you totals 117 million. We can't do that. So what we have to do is go through this list and decide which of the projects can be on the list. So that it either equals 80 million or 60 million or whatever amount that the board wants it to be. So that's where this discussion is.
But that's only because you want to limit it to the $3.
Right.
You take
Well,
that away.
Yeah, if you
say
do
what the
80
people afford.
million, that's the $1.23. If you do 60 million, that's the $3. So if you guys say, we're not comfortable with any amount above, pick some number, 61,000,025, I could just go here and say 61.5. Sorry. And then, sorry, I'm nervous. And then down here, your number changes to, here's how much you can add. You can add $23.4 million worth of these projects up here. So right now I have it set at 80 million. Oops. So that if that's the number you want to work with, you can pick $41.8 million off of this menu, or if you want to add some additional rows, you can do that too. And then based on that, we take that information to build a resolution. So if you're not, yeah, I mean, you have to decide if you want to start picking things off this list and talking about what needs to go on here.
What are your pros and cons, the district's pros and cons between November and May? Like, what's the big push for November? Is it just because of the record turnout for voters?
Two things, yes. Voter turnout is expected to be high, especially, I think, from what I understand, parents of school-aged children don't tend to vote in May elections, but they do tend to vote in November elections. The second thing is, we were approved for the Awesome Grant, so that's a given. We don't know about May. We don't know if we would be approved in May. It depends on how many districts, how fast we apply, et cetera. And I do want to restate that with the Awesome Grant, if our school district doesn't pass a bond, it's not like the taxpayer saves $6 million. ODE gives that money to a different school district. Somebody's getting that 6 million. There's like a waiting list, I guess how you put it. So Brooke County School District doesn't get 6 million, and whoever's next in the list gets it.
We didn't pass our last bond.
Right.
We got the 6 million.
We did not. Just given away. We were given
But we
a,
have it.
we were given a commitment if we would have passed the bond. And because we didn't pass the bond, it went to the next school districts in the list.
But we've been approved if we run another one.
We have a new commitment.
How large is this fund? Was that the 6 millions, the awesome grants
remember?
coming out?
How much it is?
The entire fund?
Yeah,
No.
I can have that answer to you in maybe by the end of this meeting. Cause I do have it somewhere, I just have to search for it, but I don't wanna do that while I've got this up on my screen.
Well, I mean, I'll throw out some questions. The last bond meeting I asked when we replaced roofs last, I haven't had that follow-up. And when we replaced the HVAC systems and those things at these schools, because that was part of the upgrades or the ventilation systems were part of the COVID, I guess, guidelines to go back to schools. What did we do with that? And then the other question that's new, when we found out we were gonna come to this meeting and people found out we were having a bond, the $750,000 that we used to buy modulars, that was in like an investment fund, or I don't remember where you said we got it, but it was in some investment. And is that a recurring investment? Are we gonna have $750,000 again? Did we drain that account? Are we building equity on those funds that we can use each year? And the other one was the $1 million we came up with for those modulars 2 months prior. We weren't able to fix the leakage at the middle school with the water running in because we didn't have the funds to do so. But then 2 months later, we had $1 million to buy modulars. So those are the two biggest things that I was able to get calls from people in the last couple of days when they saw this posted on the website. And I don't have answers to those. I never got follow-up on the roofs. I don't know what we're investing in where we're getting $750,000. So is that gonna reoccur, or what's that fund look like?
So we saw. It's basically. We are being punished for planning ahead. We saw the need for the modulars a long time in advance. We had some extra general fund money that just because we had a ton of savings because we had. A bunch of positions we couldn't fill all year long. We had I think 5 IA positions, 2 secretary positions, et cetera. So we had an extra $1 million in the general fund. We set it aside in the maintenance reserve. Knowing that we were going to need modulars. And so we put that money there. And then when we came to the board and said, we need to do these modulars and we have the money because we set it aside, it came out of that maintenance reserve. But and that was in like what, September or something, September, October. And then in January, the roofs started happening at the middle school. Well, we've already got this modular thing going at that point. So that's,
We approved modulars in April. So was it not in an event? So we carried money
it
over,
was in
because
the-
you said in the
Reserve
meeting,
fund. The reserve fund.
you said we had it invested and you were gaining
all of our,
each month or however it was building in something.
I think you were just referring to having higher interest earnings across the board.
in the general fund.
Yeah. Which gave you more money available to
Yes.
shift things around.
And that was last year.
Like 700% higher than projected.
Yep, that was 23-24. The extra $1 million came from 22-23. So, and that was partially because it was a bunch of things that happened in that year that we had unspent money. We had more money. We ended the year with more money than what we planned. And so we moved that money to reserve fund so that we could do things that we knew we were gonna need to do like later. And so we planned ahead. Part of that was modulars at the middle school, which we knew that September of 2024, we're gonna need to do something with those modulars. So we set money aside for that as well. There were a lot of things that we set aside money for at that time. So.
It seems like to gain the trust of the public, that we're not putting out, like every single time we keep trying to run bonds for like boilers and roofs constantly, and we're not putting out itemized. Like, I think it'd be smart to work into our strategic plan, like the maintenance of buildings. Like as we go out, so that we are, being.
You're still gonna need a bond to do that. You can't do big capital projects like this with your operating funds. Or you'll have no operating funds.
But we still
And we
have to
spent
do,
10 million in the last 10 years on maintenance that we reserved out of the operating funds. That's the max we can do.
so as a
without a bond.
district, what you're saying is to fix, you always just have to run a bond to
Yes.
fix
For
these.
big things.
Big thing.
Yeah.
That's how Oregon's finance system is set up. Is it crazy? Yes. Is it inequitable? Yes. Is it the system? Yes.
And I was gonna use a couple of analogies, and so I liked Anna's, but I had one, so maybe we can do two. So, if we had a storm tonight and a big tree fell on your roof. The average person doesn't have money to go and call and say, bring me a new roof tomorrow. Because, you might have to call the insurance or call your family or figure out how to pay for it. I liked Anna's about you have a car, in your account, you change out the tires, have the oil change, all of those things. But you don't just go and replace, overnight. So, was another part of that too, but there's these big ticket items that you have to go out for bond for. And all I can say is obviously I'm new. I don't know how monies were spent. I don't know any of those things. All that I can say is moving forward, I have to be able to build the trust of the community. And one of those hexagons up there was talking about transparency honesty monitoring. And that's all that we can do moving forward. We have boulders that are 100 years old. We have roofs that need, fixing. So my part as a superintendent, I have to make sure that our kids are safe and they have healthy learning environments. All of these items are exciting and we want to have a destination district. We want to give kids opportunities, but we have to be able to look at these maintenance items. And all I can do is moving forward, say, what can we do? We have roofs, we have boilers, we need air conditioning, we need heating, all of those big items are not going to be pulled out of a general fund, just like you wouldn't pull them out of your your checking account. You'd have to figure out, how am I going to replace an entire car? How am I going to replace, a roof tomorrow if something happened today with it? So, those types of things, we're gonna have to look at, but I just, thinking moving forward, can't fix anything that happened in the past. But how can we replace these things moving forward? And you just being very transparent about the monies that we spend. And along the way, the timeline is, we replace the roof, it costs this much, 80 million minus 1 million. Okay, we replaced that roof. Now the next roof, 79 million minus 2 million. We replaced all the HVACs, and being very transparent at every board meeting, putting it on the website, having updates by project manager, every single thing that we spend money on, whether it's $10, $10,000, or $10 million. Every board meeting, every special board meeting, everything on the website, we're very open, very honest about every dollar that's spent, because it is the taxpayer money. And so me coming in, I have to earn the trust of our community when they're entrusting us with such a big bond. So I think for me, I can't do anything about, the roof wasn't replaced, the boiler wasn't replaced. I'm very sorry, but again, those types of things don't come out of the general budget, just like they don't come out of our general household budgets typically either. So you have to kind of save along the way. Yes, but there's only so much you can spend and do out of general funds that we have. And so those big ticket items are always bond items. Again, it's me and us, the team, being very open, honest, transparent along the way if this bond does go through, and letting you know exactly what's being spent. Because that top item up there, keeping kids safe and healthy, what Leland was saying, if we're spending 50,000 at that school on surveillance cameras because we want safety, we want to make sure our building, we want to keep Barnes Butte, our brand new beautiful building, safe. And we feel like surveillance cameras are going to help us to do that. So, things aren't vandalized, whatever the case may be. We value safety. We come back to the board. We installed it on, June 19th. And this is what the cost was. We were over a penny, under $10, whatever the case may be. We report that every single time something's been accomplished, so that we, are very transparent with where this money is going.
How did we have the funds to build Pioneer? We didn't run a bond for Pioneer.
That was partially from ESSER money and partially from maintenance reserve, which is funded by general fund.
And how much was Pioneer that we did partial and partial? How much came from each fund?
It's
$4 million.
Yeah, I'm
from
thinking-
ESSER,
Yeah, probably 75% of it, you think, came from ESSER?
The majority of it.
The majority of it came from ESSER,
And what was the total cost?
4
A
million.
little over 4 million.
Yep, and that was, the idea behind that was to be able to expand Steens Pillar.
Say that again.
To be able to expand Steens Pillar Elementary because they needed space. And this gave Pioneer the ability to, one, have their own space outside of an elementary school, and two, access the trade programs at the high school. So that was the idea of moving it right there beside the high school.
So when we moved Pioneer, what did Steens Pillar gain? When we spent the 4.6 to move Pioneer, what did we gain?
That south building.
Which would be what, the 2 fifth grade classrooms?
There's 2 or 3 classrooms in there, and then GMH also was a piece of that move too, where they absorbed, I think, 4 classes in there. So it
And
opened up.
Full use of the gym.
Yeah.
And cafeteria.
So if we were able to find a building that could house Grizzly Mountain and the district office, and maybe nutritional services or something, could we open Steens Pillar up possibly to a K-8? Would there be the ability to do that, to
Yeah.
alleviate some of
Yes,
the middle
that's,
school?
If you move GMH out of there, that would free up probably 5 to 6 classes. So then, yeah, you could expand students.
And potentially a library.
I think I would like to see the true numbers on that, because my understanding is. Right now, Grizzly Mountain shares those modulars, so like this elementary teacher teaches these days. And then the opposite days, they use the same classroom to teach others. So although you're moving, say, 5 Grizzly Mountain classes, you're only gaining 2 or 3 classrooms because they share them.
I know Dr. Skinner now has a pretty good in with Grizzly Mountain Homelink and the operation, so yeah, we can definitely get that information for you.
So in 2022, we ran an essentials bond of 66 million. Today, the essentials bond is 43 million. What happened to the other 23?
Part of that is down here in this bottom section.
The $66 million bond included a big improvement to the CTE, basically the CTE wing at the high school. That was a huge part of it. A bigger, a kind of a different look at some of the options that are here that were not facilities related, and there was soccer lighting. I'm going off memory.
Wasn't your middle school expansion on that too?
There was yes.
Yeah, middle school expansion.
So there were a lot of things
But
in,
that's on the bottom section now. So services
Yeah.
was in there.
so in the 66 million, it was not just essentials. It included a lot of additional things.
And like Bellevue transportation.
Yes, that's a good, parking lot at Palview, try to do something with the parking lot, student drop off out there.
So on this list with the middle school projects you have listed, you're over 20 million. Are we building a new school? Or are we just fixing the one we
That's
got?
an option. So if you know, again, that's where she was gonna do the subtraction there. So if you liked the idea of the one that's 11, the preschool through 8th grade choice school, maybe you like that one better, or
No, I'm trying-
CCMS expansion. Oh, back up to
At
top.
the
I'm sorry.
top, you have
Okay.
12.1 million for the middle school. Then down here, you have
Oh.
CCMS expansion at 8.5. So are you building a brand new school for 20 million, or are we fixing the current school we have for 20 million?
The top is the maintenance, is the safety items, the maintenance that needs to be done. And then if you chose to add on another wing, an expansion area, then that would be then 8. Up at the top is the maintenance items, that some of the ones that Leland shared with you, but obviously there's some more. So if you just wanted to do the maintenance and did not want to do the expansion, then it would just be the 12 or the roof, the whole, or those.
I just feel like if you did both of those for $20 million, you should be able to build a brand new school.
You can't, a middle school would cost 80,
There's
80 million.
Still just
Just for the building.
80 million.
That's why we were trying to come up with some cheaper options to say, how about a wing, or here's a choice school that just takes some overflow out and you have another additional, like a modular type of thing that's a separate school.
So a choice school could be Steam's Pillar if we did the K-8. And move Grizzly Mountain and some other things to a different building.
Have we looked at other buildings at all? Has anybody looked into that at all to see if there's any existing buildings that would house
We're
that?
always looking. Jessica, I do want to say I agree with you. You should be able to build a middle school.
You would hope.
I do want to, that was an option, we looked at that, but we were so far off.
Start looking at how much a high school
high school's
costs to
almost
build.
100, yeah.
So what's a preschool through 8th grade choice school? What are you doing with 11 million if it costs 80 million to build a new school? So what is that? What's 11 million getting us for a preschool through 8th choice?
Housing about 200 to 250 kids, so another option for overflow enrollment.
But what is that, a modular? Where are you gonna put it?
Yeah, we're.
So we're gonna spend 11 million on a
It's an option.
modular?
Well, it would be
It's-
bigger than
it's
Pioneer High
it's
School,
way bigger, yeah.
but it would be that same style of construction.
Plus all your utilities and infrastructure. Furniture.
60.
Your enrollment was like
Square foot.
68
The
this
cost per square foot.
And this building would house potentially up to 250 kids, so.
So I'm really interested in the new building and moving Grizzly Mountain in a district office. That's a big, big sell point.
Option one or option two?
Option one would be existing build, property, I mean, like a building that is already here in town with renovation costs, and option two would be more like a Pioneer.
So does that modular, is it gonna be half the size of the K-8 preschool, because it's half the price? What's the idea there? How many is that gonna house?
Yes.
125, because we have 200 plus in our Grizzly Mountain program, so that's not gonna work. We would need a size of preschool K-8 to house Grizzly Mountain.
But they're not there every day,
Yeah,
so.
potentially, the way that hybrid program is structured, I don't believe all kids are there all at one time. So it'd be a lot of more like working with their schedule in that hybrid of what do they need? I know at GMH, they need more like teacher offices for those virtual meetings. So it wouldn't be just a direct comparative.
What happens if we purchase a building and it's more than 2 million? Say it's 4 million, say it's double that price, because we don't know. I mean, say it's 4 million to buy a building, what happens with the budget? If we approve a resolution and the building is double.
We wouldn't pay that.
So
Yeah,
then we
it's
just
over our
don't get it.
budget, we find different options.
Okay, say we couldn't find an option, say it is 4 million and then the 2 million we can spend elsewhere, how does this work? What
Well, you
happens
have
then?
5 million budgeted in, so you really have 75 million budgeted in between a modular or buying a building, so you could combine that to still buy a building.
Well, that's if we
I mean-
elect option 1 and 2. That's what I'm trying to understand. If I'm gonna pick and choose, how does this work? So if we only went with option 1 and a building was 4 million, what happens? Where does that 2 million go?
So,
If we don't.
Find something, right?
yeah, so that happens when
Right.
you start something, a process like this, that, you know, it's 3 to 4, maybe sometimes 5 years before you carry out everything on the list. So there are times when prices go up dramatically, times when something completely changes, like you were expecting to do something with a building and it's burns down, you know, like
Right.
you don't need to do anything to that building. So then what you have to do at that point is you have to bring it back and you have to you have like a committee of people that's a couple of board members, some community members, some staff members, et cetera. And they talk through the stuff and they meet all the time and they say, these are the things that are going on. And then they might say, look, we have this $2 million that we set aside for this. There's no way that we're gonna be able to get something for $2 million. There are a lot of options. We could wait towards the end of the project and see if there's savings on some of the other things. And then you could redirect savings to that one project. Or you could just not do the project whatsoever and then just set that money aside to help repay the bond. You just don't do the project. You could. Yeah, that's about your options that I can think of right now.
Well, yeah, my concern is like, I think there is maybe a potential building or some things we can look at, and if we don't have all that information, it's hard to vote for which option, because if you haven't like met to find out how much things are, it's hard to budget in. We don't know the cost.
Yeah.
So I'm saying like, if you have 75 million budgeted and say, you know, we can find a building for 3 million or 5 million. Like, is this fluid? Like,
No. Well, she said the resolution is pretty,
Yeah, as long as you stay within what the resolution says, and again, it's fairly broad, it'll say something like upgrade facilities. Sometimes it mentions the schools, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes sometimes it'll say build a new building or procure land, you know, basic things like that. So if you, didn't say you wanted land and then you wanted to go buy land, you'd have to come up with some other money for that, so. It's,
oh, go ahead.
yeah,
This is just a lot to take in.
it really is, yeah.
Maybe better off just raising the option, value of option 1 and skipping option 2, I would think.
Yeah, you'd wanna be one or the other, so.
No, you don't want
Oh,
to.
yeah.
There's no.
So you wanna put the value, you know, how much you would want to the city towards it.
So like the field lighting, didn't we just update the field lighting? I mean, I was out there when they were putting in the new LED stuff.
We did put new LEDs on the football fields. But there was a lot of field lighting stuff that came up with the community long range facility stuff the last time. On like soccer fields and baseball fields.
Which aren't done, correct?
Yeah, we did not do any of that.
Nothing. Okay. Just
We have
Davidson.
another baseball field, I noticed that one.
That's the Davidson, the road falls those.
No, there's another
There's another
there's a second
baseball
baseball field
Yeah,
behind
second.
Crooked River. I have no
Oh.
idea. When did that happen?
Over the last 8 months or so. It was a
Did we do
volunteer
that?
It was a volunteer project.
Some baseball parents got together and raised money, did a lot of it. It's cool.
Yeah, it's right next to the existing one, but it's like in the field of Crooked River. I just looked over the other day and I'm like, oh, you have a baseball field.
Okay. So Leland, on that, just staying with that, on the field lighting, I put down like what field? Is that price for 82.5? Is that all the fields? No,
No, probably not. That would be some picking and choosing
okay.
between baseball or soccer.
How about softball? Do they have lighting?
No,
Are they included in that?
it would be open for discussion.
I think I'm really stuck on the purchase of a new building, but I think we have two vacant modulars sitting over that were kind of restructured for childcare over at the high school. I would be more interested in upping the price, give or take to 5 million for purchasing the buildings. If you're gonna purchase a building with land and the ability to move Grizzly Mountain and a bunch of stuff, it's gonna be up there in price. I'm not a fan of the modulars. Because we have two modulars sitting vacant right now.
We're gonna use both of those modulars this year. They're already. They're in the works to actually occupy at the moment.
What are they in the works for?
Let's see, we're gonna move, high school's moving one of their special programs into mod 2. And we're possibly gonna move IT into mod 1.
How many kids can be in a mod like for a class? Because, for example, you have $4 million Pioneer modular, you could move Grizzly Mountain in there.
Mod 1 is pretty small. It's probably 800 square feet. Mod 2 is big. It's like 1,200 square foot mod. You could get 25 to 30 kids in a 1,200 square foot mod.
So with Pioneer, I know that Jake came and spoke to us last time. It seems like we have a lot of different programs going on that could probably be consolidated for alternative high school. He has some work programs. We have Grizzly Mountain for high school. We have Pioneer. We have our brick and mortar high school. We have our online option high school. I'm not a fan of continuing to put mods in if we have the ability to buy a building. That's my big selling point for the bond is a building to save us money and rent. To extend, to put Grizzly Mountain in one place.
If you do a modular like we did with Pioneer High School. Although I did not care for it at the time, that has proven to be a pretty good building.
But what's the maintenance on a mod?
But maintenance on that particular building has been almost just like a brand new school. It's almost zero. I mean, this, as long as the systems are being maintained, we do preventive maintenance on all the heating and cooling units on any of those mods. And their life expectancy is not as good on the single unit mods like you see. But I've kind of eaten my words on Pioneer High School. It's turned out to be a good building.
And how old is that building? Is it 3 now?
3 or 4,
I
3 or
don't,
4 years
I
old.
don't know what year it is, so.
Okay.
From 3.
Yeah.
It's all here.
And what's the break even point on? I mean, if you're gonna pay, right here, you say true interest cost is 5.5%. So. Just doing the math on what would you actually be saving money? by spending $2 million at 5.5%. Are you spending less money that way compared to what we're paying in rent? That makes sense?
So what we're paying in rent is a small numbers compared to that. Would you say that the amount that the ESD is charging us?
So the ESD is charging us $113,000, but we'd have the ability to move tech.
And does that include the utilities or is did I
It's
separate?
least utilities maintenance for district office.
Yeah, so only a
130.
So
portion of
about
that.
$8,000 a month.
Yeah, so some of that, we'd still have that cost. We'd still have utility costs, and we'd still have maintenance costs.
So
So
2 million at 5.5 over 25 years is 12,000 a month.
So
$4,000 a month more technically.
Yeah, but you have the ability to move Grizzly Mountain, our tech
Sure, I'm-
department, our nutritional services and own the building. So you're not throwing it away,
No, but it is costing you more.
but it's brick and mortar opposed to having. I mean, if we're gonna offer trades. And I think there's a lot left out here, like. There's a lot of stuff going on with Baker Institute that. You know, we would really like to partner. I think that Dr. Skinner is very, very wise. In wanting to do that, there's a lot of programs and opportunity. I don't think everything is quite laid out here.
I'm happy to add a row that fast. Just
So
tell
I-
me what you
The
want on
thing
it.
is, it's like, it's
I
really
put the number in.
difficult. I'm supportive of a trade bond. I wanna be very open and I trust Dr. Skinner and I want to support her. Like, I trust her and I wanna support her. I just feel like. When we have these meetings that are like, just push, 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 it's like there's a lot left unsaid and not done. Like, have you met with the director of Baker Institute with Doug? Do you have some of that stuff in order? Like, do we have, I mean, there is a building currently that is possibly a possibility for us, and I don't wanna name what building that is, but not all of that stuff is brought to the board, and those are really, really important things for our community, and I don't wanna. My fear is that like you pass a bond or you pass the option to do that, but we're not being really clear on all the options that we have and what we're gaining. And I don't wanna, I wanna be very, very transparent going forward that we have really good opportunities in front of us. And I wanna put that out there. I just don't, wanna say, oh yeah, we'll do this, but this can't be changed and that can't be changed. And then we lose out on some of the things that I think would be really important to the community.
We feel very rushed as well. We're trying to just coordinate and
But I agree with you, like November is ideal as far as because of the voting turnout. I just wanna make sure that we are super transparent, like if you haven't met with. The people who have a building and we don't know the cost, how do we estimate? What a cost is if this can't be fluid? Like, those are really big things for me.
so
You know.
then I'm thinking we can't do this. By in November. Because we either have to make some estimates, have some trust. And do the best we can, or we need to take a lot longer to do this, hash out all the details.
It's still
get
gonna be an
ev-
estimate though.
It's still gonna be an estimate, yeah, but we can have some of the questions answered. So really, that's what we're here for, is we're trying to, we all have full-time jobs doing things that are not related to a bond. So we are trying to do those things. We have not had enough time to do all of the things that would be, if this was perfect, we had not had time to do it.
Do you have enough time by May? I wanna be very clear, like, I am very supportive of running a bond. That we do need to maintain our schools and do this stuff, but we have to have the detail. That's why I pulled my name off the last bond, because it was this big rush. It was just like, whoa, and not everything was in detail. And so I felt like I was being hoodwinked by the fact that like, we have to do this, we have to do this, and we are asking the taxpayers to pay for this, and we have to make sure that our i's are dotted and our t's are crossed. And I trust Dr. Skinner. I want the stuff that she wants to have here because I think she wants to have the best district. I just want to make sure that we have all of those, questions answered. And if we're going to run a trade bond and we haven't had a meeting with Baker Institute with our superintendent and, you know, a board member or member, like, you know, members of the budget committee or different people in our community. I just. It just seems, it really stresses me out. To not make sure things are, and I'm really interested in the building option. I just don't think that the homework has been done.
There's been time.
And I mean, you're right about the building. I mean, we have looked at buildings, but costs are always gonna go up or down. So, I mean, that building, you know, or any building could be sold tomorrow. So that's why we were estimating. I mean, if we were looking at a certain building, we could kind of say, oh, we're gonna offer this, but we can't, we have no abilities to do that right now. So, you know, we were estimating that because there's some potential properties that are way less than that. And they were like, oh, maybe we could renovate, it would be about this amount. That's right now, but those buildings that we're, you know, estimating and looking at that are potentially for sale right now could totally be a different price or sold tomorrow. So that's kind of the reason that the 2 million is an estimate, just from some of the ones that are available right now. We can definitely estimate and look at those costs, and we kind of talked and looked, but again, it's difficult to say, you know, tomorrow that they're gonna sell it to us for that price, because, you know, we don't know. So that's why it's an estimate. I think it's a fairly good estimate right there with renovations of a few things that are available. But, without contracts and negotiations and them saying, yes, we're gonna take that because we can't do that until we know we have the monies. That's why those are estimates right there, just because we don't have it for sure. Anything with that right now.
What's included in the 3.4 million for the stadium? Is that just the roof and the
In the
stadium?
roof, but to do that roof. The bleachers all have to be completely torn out and removed. The roof needs to be redone. The siding on the back needs to be completely redone. The end caps that go around the top of the roof need to be redone.
Does that include anything inside?
That's what I'm.
There was some
Where
stuff.
the bucket is?
There was some stuff that was inside that was like, priority two stuff. I think it included trying to move the concession stand out of there and converting the girls' locker room back into a full locker room.
Cause that last bond did that. It paid and it put a concession stand in the restrooms.
Yep.
Is that still in that?
That is still in that.
So it kept all the same stuff as the last one.
The biggest thing about that, I mean, when we have like visiting football teams, they get like part of the locker room. It's not very big. And the locker rooms are in. If you've been in them, they're not in great shape. I'm sure most of you have probably.
Gross.
That's
That's
Yeah,
the word you're looking for.
They have no stall doors, you know, lighting is hit or miss, it's.
We retrofitted the restrooms in that building 2 years ago, and they're already bad again.
The danger is, you know, you say, okay, that it includes, it's 3.4, whatever that number is. There's priority 1 stuff in there, and then there's priority 2 stuff in there. So if you end up with the priority 1 stuff costing more, that's why that number is what that number is. But if you are able to save money, which he tries his best to save money, then he can do some of that priority 1, 2 stuff. And so that's why we're a little bit vague, because we don't want to go out and say, we are going to fix the women's restrooms, because then if we get in and that roof costs twice as much as we thought it was going to, and we can't do the women's restrooms, we don't want to have made a promise that we can't keep. So that's why some of this stuff is shown in summary form, because we're saying, okay, we know what we want to do. We know what we have to do, and we're estimating what the cost is for what we have to do. But if we do save money in some of those things, which of course we'll try, we're estimating there's going to be inflation. Maybe it won't be as bad as we're estimating. If you save money, then you can continue to do projects within the scope of what you said. If you say you're doing, you know, building maintenance at these schools, you can continue to do that even if you save money on some of those projects. But you have to estimate a little bit high. You have to assume that there's project management, architectural engineering, inflation, you know, things like that. And so that's where these numbers come from, that they are definitely estimates. And even if, like, one of you mentioned, even if you had 18 months to do this, I think it was Steve, you still will have to do estimates. because you're doing these estimates as of today. But you, even if we pass the bond, that's November, that's several months from now, who knows what inflation will do between now and then you don't actually sell the bonds till probably January. Then you don't start $80 million worth of projects all in the same day. You have to do some of them, some summers and so they don't all get done. So you're talking, could be 2 or 3 years from now when some of these projects get done. So you have to live with estimates when you're doing bond planning, unfortunately.
How long ago did you,
HVAC.
how long ago did you put in the new bleachers? Did we not need a roof when we put those in?
This was before me, but it would have been 2015, yeah, because we used to have the wooden bleachers, they pulled those out.
We may not
put the
have money to
wooden
do
bleachers in.
that.
I don't know if they evaluated the roof.
What was driving the upgrade of the stadium was an engineer's report saying it was in danger of immediate collapse. We were trying to make safety repairs at that time in advance of the spring sports season. And the roof wasn't part of the problem. So the minimum money went in there in order to retrofit and make it safe for the public to continue to use.
One of the HVAC units went out in there, so we're replacing that in-house, so that would probably cut some of the costs, some of that a little bit. That's not that expensive of a thing, but there's a lot of stuff on the list that's not in the priority one list.
Well, here's my thing. I don't think we can go to the voters in 2022, say we need 66 million, and then come back to the voters in 2024 and say we need 12 million, and now go to the voters and say we need 62 million. And somehow in a week, we decided that the gap in all those numbers was appropriate. I don't think it's saleable to the voters. I am concerned about the blue list and the yellow list. The blue list is nothing more than repetition of what we've been saying since 2022 and all the public process that went into that. It's just updated for current costs. I don't know the whole lot of explanation is needed there. I know nobody loves floors and roofs and boilers. The floors and roofs and boilers are what we need. I don't see any reason to change the message. We would have to do a lot of talking and a lot of educating to get to some public agreement around the yellow list. So as enthusiastic as I could get about all of that, I think there's another path, which is to start the discussion now for the yellow list and begin to build expectation of a bond that would cover some of this stuff once the new data centers come online. And we're able to go to the public and say, hey, by keeping the existing tax rate the same, it won't cost you a penny more, and the data centers will build whatever we want to build out of this on whatever revenue that's going to yield, which I think is going to be a fairly substantial amount of money for us. It's about 25% increase in the existing rate, if people would agree to that. It's not a different strategy than what the county used to fund the courthouse. So I don't think we can sell the blue list between now and November. I do think we need to go for May. Disappointingly, because November is probably the better election, but reality is people are going to feel like they're being rushed and they're going to be right. So we should back up, agree to do whatever we're going to do in essential maintenance in May, do the proper education and the proper promotion, which our new superintendent is better positioned to do than what we've had before. And then get thinking now with public engagement, which I agree with, around what's our highest priority on this very ambitious goal. That's where I just go.
And not do that in May, just your.
Do
Just
just
do the
essentials,
list.
another there is, as long as I have
Like some
lived,
clarification and put your.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, because as long as I have lived in this community. When we used to do bonds all the time for operations, most of you weren't even born yet. We had to go 3 times on every bond. To tell the public, yes, we need it, yes, we need it, yes, we need it. Every time we carved a little bit off, the public knew how the game was played, and so did the voters, and the third time was always a charm. That's the way it worked until we got the equalization formula. I don't think Kirk County's changed all that much. The voters are gonna test you and test you and test you. But eventually, if it's really essential and you keep to your message, they'll get to a point where they can agree with you. But clearly, we're not there yet.
The data centers are in 2027, is that right?
28, I think.
Oh, 2027 is when the first.
27. Yeah, so
Then they kind of roll on after that one by one. there's also still, I've said this before at this table, I'll remind you again. There is a discussion going on between county and city about how to take their windfalls and divide them up. We're not at that table and we're not necessarily being considered. We need to push ourselves into that table and insist that the good of the whole community is considered, schools are part of the whole community. I'd like to see them take care of the schools in the cemetery district because apparently it needs some help too.
Well, and that is one of the things I was saying is it'd be really important to get involved with the city as far as understanding the tax roll-off. So we have, Anna did have stuff a little bit on the back, but have we coordinated with like the city manager and sat down at the table and said, hey, we want to be part of this conversation because I think they're more than willing to sit down with us. I think, you know, Dr. Skinner has already started maybe trying to move in that direction and making those connections, but I disagree with Scott a little bit in the fact that in order to sell the maintenance bond, which we need, we do have to have some stuff that people want to see, and I do think they will vote for this if we present it in the right way, but I feel like I'm for a bond, but I'm more for a bond in May when we have a little bit more time to really get all the numbers hammered out. Like, I don't want to vote for some of the stuff in yellow with not having like definite numbers. But I do think that we will pass a bond. And I think we'll get the community behind it, but we have to do those things, like we have to say, hey, we sat down with the city manager. We got exact numbers for buildings. You know, and those. We have more concrete, we've sat down with the community. I mean, Joel, we talked about this and the board to go out to meet with the Democrats and the Republicans and what do you guys want? What are you looking for? Like, we passed that and then we're trying to like push this bond through before we haven't even met with them. I mean, we've been invited. I think we have a meeting in
We got
February.
date scheduled, yeah.
Yeah, we have dates scheduled, but we haven't been there to actually get their feedback. And then they feel like they've been kind of slighted because it's their money. So I'm in agreement with Scott for May. I do think we need to trust Dr. Skinner and some of this other stuff that's on there. Like there's a lot of stuff on here that I like. I just want to make sure that we are being prudent.
I think the transparency part or communicating, like Scott said, this stuff, you know, you can keep going to your blue in your face, but I think maybe helping add, like, what is the priority one? What is the priority two? Like, when you go and say, hey, we're gonna put 11 million into Crooked River, that's very broad and that's a lot of money. So I think people would better correlate with it, or I don't know, connect with it if they understood what's a tier one, what's a tier two. It's not to say we're gonna do them, but it is to say, hey, we see these needs, but you know, this is one. And I think that also gives the community the ability to see that, like, we are listening to you, we do hear you, but you know, unfortunately, the roof comes before this, or vice versa, you know, may come sit down with you and it's like, hey, Leland, we'd rather see new plumbing, I don't know, whatever, you know, and you could say, well, that doesn't trump a roof, or, oh yeah, that could come before this, you know what I mean? It kind of gives them the ability to have a say in a sense of things. I just feel like, again, we didn't talk to anyone in the community, and I feel like this is how we ran the last bond, and whatever that was, May. I think it's the same exact timeline, and it's like, we did all this, we submitted it, and then when Cheyenne came to check on it, it's like, oh, you're already in this bubble, and it's like, we didn't even do the first 3 and we're already in 4, and it was a disaster in the sense of getting out to the community and finding support.
But we
As
almost
well.
passed it. It almost passed. So the fact that if we don't repeat what we did and we go back out and we all are on the same page, I know that it will pass in May.
And I think, and just to chime in, like, and I think this is a win, because this helps us kind of pause at this point. We were saying, hey, here's an opportunity if we wanted to do this. And, you know, as the board is, you know, the voice of Kirk County voters, it's awesome now to hear like, hey, now's not the point, but we're at a great launching point where from now until May, we really can put the effort and time into that. So I think even though it's, hey, it sounds like probably don't move forward for November, this does provide a great runway for us to take off through the fall, winter, spring to potentially look at a May a May bond. So that's very helpful.
Would we have that timeline up front so we're not in this boat
That's what I was
again?
gonna ask, yeah.
Like-
What is that timeline that you have
Like,
for this one?
It's not a
When-
48-hour turnaround.
I mean, when's not that you wanna do that drop dead time,
In addition to some of this.
date to file something anyways, but.
The yellow, so.
Yeah, I can fill that out. The first, in a May election, the first, form that's due to the county is in February. So then you would backwards engineer your timeline from
So you got
that.
6 months.
Yeah, I don't think we're going, in that amount of time, I don't think we'll have what you're looking for. But we can try. That's what we do.
Does the board need to vote? Cause we voted to go out and talk, but to community members about. Volunteer opportunities, did we vote to go talk about bond issues?
We've got a policy that says whenever the board needs to give authority for individual board members to go out and speak on behalf of the board. So
But what if we're not speaking on behalf of us, we're just trying to listen? Like, if we just want to hear.
Well,
from
then they ask
people.
questions and.
Well, just make sure you say you're not voting, speak on behalf of the
Yeah,
board, you're speaking
yeah.
in your individual capacity.
yeah, as long as you're not presenting yourself as I am speaking on behalf of 5 people. It's
Like,
like,
we're
hey, I'm getting
listening
input.
as a board member,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense, but we're not like speaking, it's just,
Yeah.
it would be
Even
nice
if you're
to hear.
speaking, you can say,
Yeah.
I, as a board, individual board member, not speaking for the entire board, believe, da, 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 da. Cause you
Yeah.
can say whatever you want to as elected official. You just don't get to speak for me or Steve or Jen or.
So that doesn't require a vote if we were to go ask a group or.
You can go ask,
people
hey, what
or-
do you think about,
Yeah,
and then, ask somebody's opinion on something.
well, just like a group, like if we were to meet with a group of people, like type situation, I just don't wanna be in any.
You can come down and say UFOs are gonna come down and fix the roofs and the boilers and the floors.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
believe it, you can say it. It ain't gonna be true. Don't speak for the rest of us, but you can say it.
Yeah, and just being really clear on that distinction, Mike, I'm speaking individually, I think you're covered.
Maybe
Just
that
think
gives you a
that
lot of
tricky
time
point
also
with the
to
economy
ensure
too. Yeah, so,
lack of a better word, your PR out there, your public,
and that's what we're missing on the last one.
public
too.
education piece.
So,
Sure.
and is there a way that you could schedule with Baker to talk with them and find out, you know, what their ideas are, thoughts are, where they could maybe partner with us on some of the CTE stuff?
I called them today. So yeah, that's rolling. I haven't heard back yet, but yeah, we'll get that connected. And that's just us meeting on.
Can we schedule a time maybe to, I mean, do you have the city manager come and speak to the board? Do you guys set up a meeting with him to come to the table with like a member of the budget committee?
We met with him,
board member?
yeah, yeah,
And then
I emailed him again to do a follow-up, but we've met with him as well, just to get stuff, connections, get some initial conversations going, and then we're gonna do, I think a follow-up, yes.
I mean, I agree with Scott and that the schools are a huge part of our community and we bring people in here for any industry. They're looking at how good are our schools? What do we offer? And so we have to be at that table. You know, and be part of that conversation.
And are you gonna explore that with our current CTE programs where we, because I think Cheyenne had mentioned, or maybe Scott, I don't know, but combining or, you know, condensing where you may not have 12 to pick from, you have 8, but they actually come out with certificates or something like that, where we could partner with that moving forward, whether that's Baker or anyone else. I don't know if the city or county type funds or anything could help. It might be worth, you know, looking at, I don't know, like local businesses or people that could offer like, you know, we do fabricating, so, you know, what would we need to bring into current programs? Like, I would like to see some of that where we might have some of this going where, hey, we need this machine, or you know what I mean? And then they could go in the world and do fabricating. We have lots of fabricators, you know, I don't know about the electrical side of things. I don't know. You know, I'd like to maybe see building on, although I would love to see, you know, more trades, that's great, but is there also a way that we could look at building on the current ones we have?
So that is a huge goal that I, you know, wanted to, and still, you know, obviously want to continue pushing through. So we've met with the community college here. So one example of that is we have food handling. Well, I will like, okay, that's one little small piece. I see that we offer bakery. What can we do in terms of producing a certification in bakery? So if people want to, our kids want to do cupcake design, catering with, decorating cakes, like there's different tiers. So it's like bakery, I get a bakery certification. So now I can decorate cakes, I can work for a caterer, like just not a food handler, because that's the lowest level of culinary arts, right? It's important. I can go work
Right.
fast food, I can do those things, but like, what can I do to get additional pay for my students coming out? They can, they can work here with a food handler, but hey, if I get them a bakery certificate, that ups the ante. Now I can work in a bakery decorating cakes. That's just one example. But I mean, I'm looking into maybe some pre-vet, like, I mean, there's other opportunities that we looked at and having those pathways for kids, but being intentional. Like all eighth grade students, as a ninth grader, we're going to have conversations and we're going to ensure that those kids are set up by the time they in school, that we're not just, oh, junior year or senior year. What can we, how can we truly, if they want to get an associate's degree, it has to start at freshman year. Like, I mean, core completion, we looked at that as well. That's a 45 hours. So if a kid wants to truly be a doctor or a lawyer, there's 45 solid hours that's going to go towards that. If I want to be auto tech, or I want to do small engine, or I want to do something else, it's got to be intentional
Right.
along the way instead of just taking classes. We've got lots of kids taking lots of classes. That we ran some reports. I mean, I was impressed, 200, lots of credits. But we're only producing 4 welders. That's not acceptable, and we're going to be changing that. So we have so many opportunities. We just have to be a little bit more intentional about putting kids in the right classes. So we've already started meeting on that. That is a goal. When graduation comes, we want to be able to say, when those kids are walking through, core completion 45 hours, associate's degree in arts, bakery certification, food handler. I mean, we want to be able to say those things. So it's very important.
And I have really good news. We all get together again on Monday for a regular board meeting, and the CTE pathways is an agenda topic that the board requested. So Mr. Cochran, Mr. Huffman, who run those programs, we have that all spelled out so we can kind of continue this discussion and get into more detail. So more to come.
I also would like to piggyback on what Scott had brought up about driver's ed.
Yeah.
Is that something that we could look into potentially adding to a bond where it's like, hey, you're a freshman, they're generally 14 or 15. Like, is there a way that we could produce a pathway for that?
I've got
we
a
look at some of, I'm just
That
like,
way, because you have to keep operating bonds and capital bonds separate. So you'd have to have a separate bond measure just for that. But I think they have a proposal Monday night.
We're coming back with a good
That-
update.
I didn't know if that was a
Yeah.
CTE thing, that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah,
But we're, yes.
not necessarily CT, but we have a
Right.
driver's ed update
Okay.
with what it would look like. We're looking at costs, because right now that's ran through the ESD.
Right,
And.
but it sounds
we
like we
talked
need to
about-
expand that, judging by
Yeah.
money and the funds
We've
and how
got-
that.
Yeah.
But I think that that's important. That could be something that every kid could benefit from.
Yes, totally. And yeah, to Scott's point, that would be outside of a bond, but that doesn't mean that's not something that we're looking at and need to figure out how to afford and pay for.
But
So.
it's a different type of bond?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to
Bonds-
understand
bonds
all
You have
this.
two
so-
kinds of bonds, operating bonds, which is fine for your operating expenses. You can go do those if you want to. There's a limit on the amount you can put in. I think it's $500 per thousand. Don't remember. And then there's capital bonds for building things. So you can't put capital and operating expenses together under Oregon bond law.
So what does it look like to do the other bond, the same type of
Process.
proposal
Yeah.
process? Okay,
But I mean, you can talk a fraction of a penny.
right.
Probably.
But I think looking at some of those programs that maybe are missing.
Yeah.
That we could still build. I mean, every kid
You
can
can do an
benefit from
enhancement bond.
something.
I mean, Lake Oswego it's done that since they started it. I've went for one and lost it last
Ben
time.
just lost, but Ben always passes.
Right, Sisters has had one for a long
Yeah.
time. So you can get extra money in your operating system if you want to, one of those, that you
Yeah.
convince your community.
And we also try to apply for any grant, any additional things. We want our school district to be a destination school district. So we're looking not just for bonds, but anywhere we can
They raised.
That
flip over and
increases
find money.
enrollment when
Yeah.
They know that I'm gonna walk out with an auto check or cosmetology.
No,
Yeah, that ups their enrollment, which obviously brings in.
Great value.
Yeah, absolutely. They know, oh, I can go to Cook County Schools and I'm gonna be a cosmetologist when I leave. I'm gonna be an auto check. You know, that brings in enrollment because that's what families are looking for.
but the other side of this, you can just go to Fagans and say, hey, how about you open up a college in Crick County and we'll use. Our, whatever we call those funds that pay for college to put our kids through your system and pay their tuitions.
See,
We
this
can be
is-
creative like that.
That's the stuff I'd like to see more. How do we get creative? Just in case, you know, you come back and the voters say for a third time wasn't a charm, you know, we need to have other options.
Don't
I
put
think
that out there,
brainstorming, I don't know what
We have to have.
these options, yeah, I didn't even know that was an option, so it would be nice to explore those. So we're also looking at other options that doesn't necessarily raise the taxpayers' monies at this time, you know, and it gives us the ability to reach out to other venues or.
But I think what you're proposing, Jessica, challenges a norm that we have problems with at Crick County School District and every school district. You have to put down the drawbridge and let the community in. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to take culinary students and place them in an internship for credit, earning money with local restaurants and help alleviate local
Yes.
restaurant work shortage.
Right.
There's no reason we shouldn't pay the
Amen.
tuition to Fagans. To pay Fagans to teach our kids cosmetology in our community. There's no reason our kids can't be paid CNAs at the hospital
Right.
doing basic work. But that requires a level of cooperation, coordination, and trust that we've been unable to achieve for a really long time. And that's not Crick County specific, that's every school district wants to draw up the drawbridge and be its own little castle with a moat. And not let the community in, and that's not the new paradigm of education.
Let's open the drawbridge.
So based on the conversation tonight, we will not talk to bond council about creating a resolution for Monday, and then Leland will contact the state and withdraw from the Awesome Grant. So that we will then be eligible for the May Awesome Grant.
Sounds like that's the direction.
But when we run in May. I think it's hard.
And Anna and whoever, thank you for the work.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Lots of hard work on that.
Whoever had their hands on that.
Yes.
Hands and head. Okay. All right. It is 6:12 and we are going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you guys for coming.
I know, that's why I asked. You, color coordinated.